Annie, a 33-year-old woman, wants to share a real-life experience. She was the only girl among three siblings and married her current husband against her dad's approval due to concerns about living with in-laws and caring for her supposedly blind father-in-law. Despite her dad's objections, she moved from the West Coast to the East Coast to her husband's family home. Her dad didn't think highly of her mother-in-law or husband, but her mom encouraged her to follow her heart. Initially, her husband was kind, but over time, his kindness disappeared. The power dynamics in the house favored Annie's mother-in-law and husband over her supposedly blind father-in-law. He was diagnosed as blind a few years ago and mostly stayed home. Initially, there were caregivers, but after Annie got married, her mother-in-law and husband dismissed them without consulting anyone, citing expense as the reason. Annie insisted on retaining at least one male caregiver that her father-in-law was familiar with. She argued that her husband, being a man, should assist with bathing and personal care. Reluctantly, her husband agreed to keep the male caregiver who had been helping the family even before the father-in-law's blindness. Despite this, Annie found herself neglected in caring for her supposedly blind father-in-law while her husband and mother-in-law enjoyed themselves. One day, the supposedly blind father-in-law suddenly stood up, leaving Annie wondering about what happened and contemplating confronting her husband and mother-in-law about their behavior. I'm in charge of mornings, evenings, and a whole day each week when the caregiver is off. Despite working remotely full-time for a company, my husband and his mother treat me like a substitute caregiver, expecting me to be available all the time. When I raised concerns, they dismissed it, saying, "You married into this family with a caregiving license. Manage that baggage quietly." Ironically, they referred to my father-in-law as baggage, even though his wealth covers most of their expenses. Yet, my mother-in-law mistreats him, and my husband has even expressed a desire for his inheritance sooner. Although I considered divorcing my husband, I couldn't bear the thought of my father-in-law being mistreated in my absence. On their days off, my mother-in-law and husband leave me to care for him while they enjoy themselves and spend money recklessly. Originally, my father-in-law was a significant landowner, owning properties that generated passive income. I only managed the payments, but my mother-in-law and husband would use that money as they pleased. When I discussed this with my father-in-law, he apologized, recognizing that they saw him as a cash cow. Taking care of him wasn't burdensome, but my issue was with my mother-in-law and husband, who did neither housework nor held jobs yet acted high and mighty. My frustration with the unhelpful pair intensified. Then, out of the blue, my mother-in-law and husband announced a Caribbean trip for 2 to 3 weeks, leaving me with caregiving duties. They cheerfully packed a week in advance, instructing me not to do anything unnecessary during their absence. As they happily left, I finally had a moment to relax. To my surprise, my supposedly blind father-in-law independently changed into a suit and invited me to go out. It became evident that he wasn't completely blind, though his vision was not perfect. Handing me a business card, he indicated where he wanted to go. 3 weeks later, my oblivious husband and mother-in-law returned, refreshed from their trip, complaining about the gloomy atmosphere. They suggested going to the Maldives next time, all while immediately griping about my father-in-law and me as soon as they came back. 10 minutes after their return, the doorbell rang, and I answered through the monitor. 2 men in suits were at the front door. I recognized one as James's lawyer. Mother-in-law and my husband looked puzzled. "Oh, it's James's lawyer. What brings you here?" Father-in-law walked into the living room, guiding the lawyers to chairs and sitting down himself. He seemed to walk and sit by himself, which surprised me. "You two, sit here," he instructed my husband and mother-in-law. They sat down reluctantly, eyeing the lawyer quietly. Father-in-law called me over, and I took a seat next to him. "Today, I've set up this meeting for 3 reasons. The first one is about your husband's affair." Father-in-law pulled out a photograph from an envelope, revealing my husband, my mother-in-law, and an unfamiliar woman. The intimacy in the photo clearly indicated something was going on. Who's this woman? Neither my husband nor my mother-in-law responded. More photos emerged, showing my husband with his arm around the woman, enjoying her company, and entering a hotel. The photos, taken at different times and places, painted a clear picture of infidelity. I've known about your husband's infidelity since he married you. He didn't just go to the Caribbean with the two of you, did he? He was with her too. The evidence of his cheating was undeniable. Why? How did you? My husband seemed to believe he had gotten away with it. In truth, I hadn't noticed, as between work, household chores, and caregiving, I had little time to think about it. I had assumed he was having fun outings just with his mom. Do you have anything to say to her? My husband awkwardly glanced at me, then, breaking the tension, admitted, well, if we've been found out, so be it. Yes, you're just a caregiver to him. He has a new partner now, a so-called common-law wife, if you will. My mother-in-law laughed and remarked, is this true? Even when I directly confronted my husband, he could only mumble, oh well, without attempting to explain. We've recently rented a place for just the two of them. While they're enjoying their time, I stay alone in a hotel. Don't you think she makes a better wife for my son than you, who can't even spend time with him? According to my mother-in-law, this has been going on for over a year. If you wanted to do such a thing, you should have divorced me. Oh, I did think about letting him divorce you, but she doesn't want to take care of James. So what can we do? In another couple of years, we can just put James in a facility. That's what I thought. She spoke without a hint of remorse. Hearing all this, I couldn't hide my shock and disbelief. Well, that's how it is. I'm fine with you divorcing right now. But since you be abandoning caregiving, don't expect any compensation in the divorce settlement. My sorrow turned to anger. Enough is enough. You can't just say whatever you want, playing with her life like it's some kind of game. Father-in-law jumped up with energy and yelled at the two of them. Husband and mother-in-law were taken aback. But you've been hiding something too. You can actually see, can't you? Otherwise, how could you walk around your room and sit down by yourself? Mother-in-law quickly retorted, that's right. You lied to us. Husband desperately tried to change the subject. It's not a lie. I did go blind, but it's partial blindness. I'm not completely blind. I've been undergoing treatments, and right now I'm at an intermediate stage. Why then did you pretend you can't see? Pretend you all assume that on your own? When I woke up one morning with bad eyesight, I went to the hospital with a home caregiver and returned in a wheelchair. It was you all who jumped to conclusions, making funny faces in front of me, thinking I couldn't see you. If you knew there was a misunderstanding, why didn't you correct us? That's not fair. The home caregiver tried to set things right, but I stopped her. I wanted to observe how things played out because it seemed like both of you were happy about my blindness. At those words, both my husband and mother-in-law looked away. It hadn't been a month since my father-in-law's blindness when I married my husband. All I knew was, my father was blind. I had assumed he was completely blind. Another topic is divorce. What my daughter-in-law and my son decide to do is up to my daughter-in-law. If needed, I can introduce you to a lawyer. However, the divorce I'm referring to isn't between the two of them. It's between you and me. Father-in-law directed his gaze straight at mother-in-law while discussing the idea of divorce. Divorce? Who even thinks about that? If we're going there, let's address the last issue. I want my money back. It turned out that father-in-law had been providing mother-in-law with a monthly living allowance. However, mother-in-law, assuming blind father-in-law wouldn't notice, had been tapping into other savings, particularly the inheritance left by my father-in-law's father. You always had a penchant for lavish spending. That's why I set up a fixed amount to be transferred to you through the home caregiver. But knowing your tendencies, I anticipated you might dip into other funds when you found out about my blindness. That's why I maintained separate accounts for my earnings and the inheritance. A year later, upon checking with the bank, it was revealed that around $60,000 had been spent in just that year. $60,000. It was astonishing that mother-in-law could squander such a significant amount of money every month. If I had that kind of money in a year, I wouldn't even know what to buy. But for mother-in-law, with her spending habits, it seems like pocket change. I can't possibly pay that back. Besides, it's my money too, right? Whether it's an inheritance or whatever, I have the right to use it as I please. You don't understand inheritance law. Even if we divorce, that inheritance won't go to you. If you can repay that money all at once, I'll let you stay, and we won't proceed with a divorce. But if you can't, consider that $60,000 as part of the property division and quietly agree to a divorce. The real estate owned by father-in-law also originally came from his father's inheritance, making it exempt from being claimed by his wife, mother-in-law, in a property division. But Dad, I realize now how wrong I've been all this time. I want to change. Can you please forgive me for everything? The husband clung desperately to his father's feet. Daughter-in-law, what will you do? Do you still want to be with this lazy cheater? No, I've come to see the light. I realize how silly it was to put up with him just because I loved him. Can you recommend a lawyer? I'll be seeking compensation in the divorce proceedings and will be divorcing him. I lost all feelings for my husband and decided to demand compensation in the divorce proceedings. At the same time, I got a divorce application from a meticulous lawyer and signed it right there. Wait a second. I don't have the money to pay any compensation. You can start a part-time job or whatever and pay it back. I'll let you stay in this house for a while because of our son, daughter-in-law. Not because he's my son, but to keep an eye on him. My husband, tears in his eyes, apologized to me and signed the divorce application and the compensation agreement. Also, I want to give you a portion of my assets as a token of my gratitude and apology. I'd rather give it to you than to my son. He handed me a copy of his will. Wait, what is this? The original's with the lawyer. I can't give it to you now. When I pass away, the lawyer will contact you at that time. I want you to accept my assets. The will stated that a portion of his property and bank deposits would be inherited by me. I can't accept this. I'd only been with them for just over a year. I haven't done anything special to deserve this from father-in-law. No, that's not true. You stood by my side and tried to protect me even when the two of them said such terrible things, father-in-law said with a gentle smile. What? Why are you giving it to that young woman? I've been with you for many more years. Quiet. What have you done for me? From the moment we got married, you left all the household chores to the help. And weren't you the same with raising our son? It was me and the maids who looked after him when he was young. I know about your affairs and that you spent money on your lovers. It's shameful what you and our son have done. Even my husband appeared surprised at father-in-law's words. Wait, Mom said it was Dad who had the affair and that she raised me all by herself. What's going on? Mother-in-law looked nervous, her eyes darting around. Do you believe James over me? It was evident to everyone that mother-in-law was lying. While my husband was taken aback, this dispute unfolded between father-in-law and mother-in-law. The truth that my husband had an affair was undeniable, and there was little sympathy for him given his own transgressions. The conversation neared its conclusion. Mother-in-law was compelled to sign the divorce papers and instructed to pack her bags and leave without resistance. Mother-in-law exited the house, and on that day, father-in-law and mother-in-law officially divorced. As for the compensation for my husband's divorce proceedings, father-in-law settled it in a lump sum, believing it would be in my best interest. My husband would repay father-in-law. I packed my belongings to return to my parents' home and arranged for them to be shipped. In the spacious house, thanks to father-in-law, my husband resided on the second floor, confined to specific areas to avoid crossing paths with me. I managed to steer clear of them for an entire month. With everything settled, on the moving day, the intercom rang, and to my surprise, my parents appeared on the screen. As I opened the front door, my father was already shedding tears, and my mother greeted me with a smile. It turned out that father-in-law had generously covered the travel expenses and made all the arrangements, Even though I had only informed my parents of my decision to get a divorce, they were well aware of the challenging year I had endured. As it happened, my father had received a call from father-in-law about 6 months after my wedding. Father-in-law, being transparent about the situation, had said, "I'll take responsibility and address the issue. I'd appreciate it if you could wait a little longer before coming to get her." Having heard the full story from mother-in-law to husband to father-in-law, my father realized that simply instructing me to return wouldn't be convincing. Accepting claims of infidelity about someone you love, especially without evidence or valid reasons, is challenging. Therefore, he chose to trust father-in-law's judgment. 2 years have passed since then, and it appears that my husband has been gradually repaying father-in-law. Thankfully, my job, which has been fully remote from the beginning, hasn't tied me to a specific location. I still maintain occasional communication with father-in-law, and my work is thriving. Despite initial concerns about growing weary of love, that hasn't been the case. I now have a boyfriend, and I'm enjoying a relaxed and happy life with my family. Elderly folks who didn't finish high school speak flawless French. During my son's wedding, Aubrey, my son's wife, sneaked in a comment while using the fancy French. She smirked, making a private joke that felt awkward for a bride. It turned out, the speech we were asked to give for our son was a setup by Aubrey to embarrass us. Aubrey always looked down on us for not finishing high school and never missed a chance to insult us. As an Ivy League graduate, she often said things like, "For someone who dropped out of high school," when she suggested we participate in the wedding. Maybe she planned to make fun of us in front of her family. Perhaps she thought high school dropouts couldn't speak French properly. Despite her expectations, we reassured our son and, determined to stand up to Aubrey, I took the microphone. "I'm Violet, turning 70 soon. Despite challenges growing up, we lead normal lives like any family. We've always protected our son from our struggles. Our sacrifices paid off when he married Aubrey, but the wedding brought new challenges. When we first met Aubrey, she seemed modest and gentle, making us happy about our son marrying such a wonderful person. But things changed when my husband talked about our son's past. He's always been smart, unlike us. He even went to state university." Aubrey interrupted. "Oh, so you two didn't go to a public university?" "No," I said, "we didn't finish high school due to family issues. We had to help with the family business instead of going to school." Despite some not-so-proud moments, we exchanged sad smiles at my eldest son's wife's reaction. It's not like we didn't want to go to school like everyone else, but we were proud of our home and didn't resent it. Well, hearing that someone only finished middle school is quite surprising, right? Absolutely. But I'm glad intelligence wasn't passed down to Tyler. What do you mean? Having in-laws who only finished middle school is like a black hen laying a white egg, my eldest son's wife said with a slight smile. The tension in the air skyrocketed instantly. While we couldn't say we were proud of it, my husband and I exchanged looks at her straightforward comments. Her words caught us off guard, but my eldest son's wife didn't seem bothered. Instead, she laughed, saying, "Oh, was that too hard for high school dropouts?" Her carefree smile left us speechless. Trying to give her the benefit of the doubt, we thought maybe she didn't mean any harm and held our tongues. However, her words and actions showed nothing but disdain, as if she was looking down on us. It seemed she viewed us as pitiable, uneducated in-laws just because of the term high school dropouts. From then on, her attitude worsened, and she made hurtful comments whenever she got the chance. "You two tied the knot pretty early, huh? Probably because you had nothing better to do." "That's not true. We got to know each other and then decided to marry. It was a time when you could choose who you loved. But marrying another high school dropout probably means you could only find someone at your level, right?" Aubrey said, her words filled with malice and a mocking smile. Despite our warnings about her behavior, she continued acting as if we were arrogant and didn't seem to listen. Around Tyler, our eldest son, she put on a decent act, but in his absence, she became bold, openly expressing her criticisms. Sure, my eldest son graduated from an Ivy League school, but her conduct showed that academic achievements don't necessarily reflect one's character. As the wedding preparations advanced, her attitude deteriorated. During dinners at our home, she made comments like, "Oh, even someone with just a middle school education can cook, huh?" Observing the meal I prepared, she once remarked, "Even with just a middle school education, you live in such a nice house. Maybe it's because your son is so accomplished." Her tone implied that we were somehow dependent on my eldest son. "Aubrey, please show some respect to my dad. This house was bought with his hard-earned money. Tyler is kind, and maybe he helped, but don't be disrespectful." Even when Tyler noticed and tried to intervene, Aubrey brushed it off, saying, "I didn't mean any harm," while smirking at us. When I looked into her condescending eyes, all I felt was malice. Even when my eldest son tried to correct her, she assumed I had tattled on her and seemed annoyed. He couldn't possibly earn enough to build a house just because he dropped out of high school. That's what my friends say too. To make things worse, my eldest son's wife spread unfounded rumors in town, suggesting that we were living off our son's earnings and enjoying a luxurious life at his expense. Her insensitivity had pushed us to our limits. "Don't expect me to take care of you just because I married your son, okay? I joined Tyler's family to avoid dealing with burdens like you." "You're preaching to the choir. We wouldn't want someone who can say such harsh words to look after us anyway. You're in denial. By the way, I hope you've let go of the idea of depending on Tyler. Please stop being a bother." No matter how many times we explained, Aubrey remained convinced that we planned to keep relying on my eldest son, continually reminding us. Each time we met, even after clarifying our intentions, she wouldn't listen, leaving me with nothing but sighs. As the tension around the upcoming wedding grew, Aubrey approached us with a request. She wanted us to give a speech as part of the wedding entertainment. "Since we took some money from you both for the wedding, we'll let you attend. But in return, can you do me a favor?" And I want it to be a surprise for Tyler. "It's a bit last minute to tell me this, you know. I forgot. I'm sorry, but it's already scheduled, so I can't change it." "A speech, huh? Well, if that's all you want, I guess it's fine." Despite her sharp words, I accepted that arguing was pointless and reluctantly agreed. Despite the request for a 10-minute speech from the groom's parents, we were doubtful but went along with it. Surely she wouldn't try to cause trouble during the speech. Just as I had that thought, upon hearing my response, Aubrey narrowed her eyes and grinned mischievously, saying, "Great. So I'll need the speech in French tomorrow." "French? Why in the world?" I asked, taken aback, and she looked down at me with a smug expression. Seeing that expression, I once again realized her malicious feelings towards us, and it left me truly disappointed. Many of my friends, like me, are Ivy League graduates. I don't want to be judged because my in-laws dropped out of high school. But even if they can relate, there's no reason the speech has to be in French, right? Consider how the other guests would feel. Fine, I guess French might be too much for high school dropouts. It must be embarrassing to make excuses, huh? With her persistent sarcasm and forceful demeanor, she left us with a warning to keep our promise and walked away. I exchanged a troubled look with my husband, and he simply shook his head in silence. While we were contemplating our next move, a call came from Tyler. "Mom, are you okay? Is everything all right?" "Yes, everything's fine. What's up?" "I heard from Aubrey that you guys are going to help make the wedding special. I was worried she might have caused more trouble for you." He sounded apologetic as he said that, showing concern for Aubrey's excessive behavior. I wonder if choosing Aubrey as my life partner was a mistake. I never thought someone could change so much just because of their educational background. My eldest son expressed doubts, and it was painful for me to witness. Someone who never bragged about his education and grew up to be a kind-hearted person. Without further worry, my husband and I exchanged a knowing glance, nodding in agreement. "We're okay, honey. Don't stress. Just look forward to the wedding," we'd assured him. With that, we started preparing our speech, determined to show Aubrey our true selves. The next day, we headed to the wedding venue. On the wedding day, everything appeared to be going smoothly, except for the occasional glances and sneers from Aubrey's friends seated on her side. Even when we crossed paths in the corridor, they deliberately bumped into my shoulder without a simple greeting. Without an apology, they moved on with scornful smiles, leading me to believe they might have heard things about us from Aubrey. "Violet, are you okay?" "Yes, I'm fine." I could sense they had been briefed on something, but even then, their rudeness was quite evident. As first-time acquaintances, their character left much to be desired. If I was deemed the problem, they were certainly no better. I straightened my posture, sighed deeply, and waited for the right moment to respond. Now we have a surprise speech from the groom's parents. At the lively announcement, my husband and I looked up. My eldest son appeared shocked, and beside him, Aubrey sneered at us with a smirk that seemed entirely out of place for a bride. The French from the elderly high school dropouts is sure to be entertaining. My eldest son's wife whispered just loud enough for us to hear as we walked by. I had half a mind to slap that smug face, but I restrained myself and took hold of the microphone. After a brief moment to gather myself, I began my speech. "First, let me share a little about us." As I started, I noticed from the corner of my eye that Aubrey's eyes widened in surprise. She likely expected a disappointing speech in broken French from the grandparents. While our fluency might not be native-like, it's safe to say we exceeded her expectations. My husband, seated beside me, went on to showcase proficiency in several other foreign languages, not just French. Witnessing Aubrey's wide-eyed and stunned expression, I couldn't help but smirk. How can you give such a speech? It's strange considering you didn't finish high school. Please don't judge a book by its cover, or in this case, by one's education. I replied softly and continued with my speech. I openly delivered it in French, addressing my eldest son's wife's disapproval of our educational background. I shared how she had unexpectedly requested the French speech the day before, emphasizing her demanding attitude as if this were the least we could do to attend the wedding. I even brought up her past insults towards us. I had much more to say, but my speech was cut short due to a flustered interruption from Aubrey. Nevertheless, the murmurs and whispers in the crowd, along with the shocked look on Aubrey's face, made me feel that revenge was achieved. Sorry for that little commotion. It was a surprise speech from the groom's parents." "Thank you?" "No, thank you. And may I say, your pronunciation was impeccable. Did you study abroad?" "No, to our embarrassment, we dropped out of high school." While it's true that we didn't finish high school, my decision was driven by the need to support the family business. As for my husband, despite completing only middle school, he not only provided for his family, but also rose to become the CEO of a successful company. He climbed the ranks through relentless work, eventually establishing his own company and acquiring the necessary knowledge on his own. Skipping formal education was inconsequential for him. We crossed paths by chance through work, and understanding the similar challenges I faced, he stepped in to assist with my family's business. "Thank you for helping our family. I can't express my gratitude enough. If you appreciate it, why not join us?" Having someone who has faced similar challenges would be reassuring. That's how I joined my husband's company and continued working even after we got married until my retirement. Since the company had operations overseas, both my husband and I became fluent in French. I concluded with a smile to Aubrey. The bride requested us to deliver this speech in French at this beautiful venue. She arranged this opportunity so that my husband and I, who only completed middle school, wouldn't be looked down upon by her and her highly educated friends, some of whom graduated from prestigious universities like Harvard. Despite her request for a French speech, it seemed she couldn't fully comprehend it. Perhaps she struggled to understand our earlier speeches as well. Her earlier outbursts appeared to be fueled by her disdain for witnessing our fluent French. As I waved cheerfully, Aubrey responded timidly. Her usual sarcastic remarks vanished, and she remained silent, looking down for the rest of the event. Guests from my eldest son's wife's side seemed to grasp the speech better than she did. Their smiles from moments ago quickly faded. Aubrey's parents looked equally distressed, and the celebratory atmosphere swiftly shifted. After the ceremony, they hurried over to us, revealing their professional ties with my husband's company. As we were leaving the venue, they intercepted us, compelling my eldest son's wife, still in her elegant dress, to apologize. They, too, offered sincere apologies, and we tried our best to reassure them. Our daughter behaved terribly, and we are genuinely sorry. It's okay. In every family, people are different. I had no idea. It was unexpected. Well, maybe you never really paid attention to what I said. You were so proud, saying a black hen lays a white egg. When I disclosed the incident in front of her parents, both turned red and glared at their daughter. My eldest son's wife's complexion worsened even more. We'll make sure she reflects on her actions and discipline her appropriately to prevent a repeat. That's fine. She's now part of our son's family. She expressed a desire to distance herself from us. To make matters worse, tears welled up in my eldest son's wife's eyes. Her parents seemed formidable, but that was not our concern. Additionally, I heard of her friends had severed ties with her, believing baseless rumors, saying, "We thought you had terrible in-laws with just a middle school education." She must have felt embarrassed for getting entangled in all that. Why is this happening to me? If Tyler had told me, none of this would have happened. I did tell you. They had enough earnings to build a house and didn't need financial help. They even covered all of my college tuition. Yeah, you never really listened to me either. With those stern words, Tyler turned his back on her. Though typically mild-mannered, Tyler had reached his breaking point with the situation and was even contemplating divorce. Abandoned by relatives, friends, and even my eldest son, Aubrey found herself completely isolated. A few days after the ceremony, despite serious contemplation of divorce, it appeared they were still trying to work things out in their marriage. Despite being abandoned by my eldest son, Aubrey seemed to be working tirelessly, as if she had transformed into another person. Violet, can we please put the past behind us and get along again? I don't recall us ever getting along in the first place. Although she seemed remorseful in front of Tyler, she often approached us, feigning apologies. Being one to hold grudges, I chose to ignore her attempts to mend ties with my eldest son and our family and kept my distance. Who was suggesting cutting ties, do you think? Oh, come on, stop pretending and lend me a hand, will you? Always nagging. You're the most spiteful person. Why, thank you. Trying to showcase an old couple's French skills was quite a move as well. Unhappy with my response, a frustrated Aubrey glared at me with her unapologetic attitude. It seemed our relationship might be irreparably damaged soon. Regardless of the difficult position it put her in, I wondered about the source of her high pride. She looked down on us and was unwilling to reflect on her actions. Recently, a relative who had recorded the wedding sent us the footage. When it reached my speech, we clearly saw the surprised expression on the bride's face and burst out laughing. School isn't the only place to learn. Maybe I should try picking up something new. Why not? Perhaps I'll join you. We decided to head to a bookstore together to search for study materials.